I am Jeff Epstein's niece. But Bill was on the flight logs because he went to the island. He also went to many, many other places where me and other children were present. With my experiences, I believe he wanted to talk more about the other parties involved. And I know he didn't kill himself. I'm not sure whether they let him go and get plastic surgery and flee the country, or if they did, kill him. But I do believe he was a pawn, and that his story blew up in the media to keep people from looking beyond him. If Jeffrey was the one villain in charge of it, then, oh, he's dead, it's all over, everything's good now. MK Ultra is the practice of creating slaves with a severed memory, many of whom were my siblings, who I only got to see at family reunions, who I would rush home from school to watch on TV. I moved back to New York City because my ex-husband had a scheme to try to allow me to speak about some of this in court, since court testimony can be used as evidence to potentially open up a criminal case. But when I got to the hearing, I was only allowed to say my name and address, and the judge refused to let me speak beyond that. When we had gone to the FBI a couple years ago, they interviewed my father and said, oh, he said nothing happened, so we're going to close this case. If every successful politician is born into this world, they have vested interest in keeping it quiet. The cult of Baal, B-A-L. My family masqueraded themselves as Jewish publicly, but behind closed doors, at Passover dinners, when I was drugged, would admit, we are Satanists.
So, I am here with Anya Wick, Epstein's niece, and I've been watching Anya on TikTok. The link for her TikTok is in the description box, so please support Anya's work. And, my partner Jen has been really, just amazed by your story as well. Harrowing, a lot of it. There's components in there, for example, Bohemian Grove, and other extreme things that I'm sure will fascinate the viewers. But before we get to all that stuff, viewers, disclaimer, harrowing content warning. And because of restrictions on my channel, and I've got to make sure you get permission to publish this video and you waive your anonymity.
Of course.
Okay. So before we get then to what you've been through, do you want to just set the table a bit and let the viewers know what it was like for you growing up?
Yes, of course. So my name is Anya Wick, but at birth, I was Anya Beth Epstein. I was born in a house in Boulder. In 2015, I changed my name to Owen Theodore Epstein.
Why has no one told you that memory loss can be reversed without expensive medications? I'm 66 years old, but my memory feels as sharp as it did in my 20s. So what's my secret? A 30-second trick that protects your memories and even helps prevent Alzheimer's. A method brain health experts have nicknamed the elephant trick. The way I discovered it? Totally unexpected. I was at dinner with my daughter, sitting next to a neurologist, one of those highly paid guys who study our brains for a living. I remember overhearing him say that 78% of people over 60 experience serious memory loss, and if it's not handled the right way, it can lead to Alzheimer's and dementia. When I heard that, I leaned over and asked right away, is there anything we can do to stop it? He gave me the usual answers. Eat healthier, exercise, learn new things. But then, he lowered his voice and said something surprising. You can also do the 30-second trick my research team discovered. We call it the elephant trick because it helps lock in memories, even at an older age, just like elephants do. So of course I asked him, why does this trick work when nothing else does? And he explained that it targets the root cause of memory loss by breaking down what he called brain rust. It's this sticky plaque that builds up and damages neurons, making it hard to think and remember clearly. I'll admit, I was skeptical. I had never heard of anything like it before, but I trusted his 30 years of experience. And after everything I'd already tried, what did I have to lose? So I begged him to teach me. He pulled out his phone and sent me a video that explained everything. That night when I got home, I learned how to do the elephant trick and started right away. The first couple of days, not much happened, but by day 3, something strange kicked in. I could remember exactly where I left everything. My keys, my shoes, even my socks. Phone numbers started sticking in my head again, and I stopped getting lost when I was out. Even my sister started asking what kind of supplements I was taking, because the difference was that noticeable. And since so many people have been asking me the same thing, I decided to share the same video the doctor gave me. I asked my daughter to link it to the button below. The video is free, but you should watch it soon, because apparently the pharmaceutical industry is trying to take it down. If you click the button and it's still available, watch it all the way through, because you could be the next lucky one to protect your memory, or help someone you love get theirs back. The button is right below. Just click to watch. If you're dealing with brain fog or forgetfulness like I was, you have to try this.
In 2020, I changed it again to Anna Petrova. I had realized what I was surrounded by my entire life and thought I could hide from it. And I married a man named Wick, kept that name, and decided to start going public with my story just a few months ago. I had chemically driven amnesia the majority of my life. I am Jeff Epstein's niece, and I was raised as a sex slave. My father had me separated from my mother and twin brother and administered a substance that was designed to sever my memory. Every time I was taken to a or family vacation or a trip to the cabin in the mountains, I was given this drug upon which everything would come flooding back. But when it wore off, so would the majority of my memories of it. And I would try to go to school, perform with my bands, be a regular person. But it broke me subconsciously. I knew something was very wrong. I had internalized it on myself. And after that attempt in 2015, I got away from the slavery I was in by taking testosterone, transitioning to male, I left Colorado in 2017 and started piecing together back memories I had assumed were only nightmares in about 2020. That's the very short version of my story. And Sean, we could come at this from any angle, any point of time in my autobiography. I invite you to just ask what you are curious about.
So let's slow it down then and just go back to the beginning again. How old were you when you first realized that things weren't as they should be?
I had awareness of this in grade school. I remember my supposed 7th birthday. I was actually already 10 years old. Let me backtrack. My father and stepmother had a baby girl in 1991 who was raised by another family. In 1998, they assigned me her birth date on my birth certificate, which they waited 10 years to file, claiming my stepmother was my biological mother, and finally put me in school in the gifted program, telling me I was tall. I thought it was very strange that my mother was so callous with me. I knew it wasn't normal that I wouldn't let her touch me on the shoulder, and I felt worlds away from my peers. I remember in the 1st grade sitting there journaling, I don't feel 7. I feel much older. I feel at once like there's something I'm missing that the rest of my classmates all understand, and that I've lived a lot more than that. I remember being on the schoolyard talking with my few friends about what would it be like if you were tortured and didn't know it. I'm like, what are you talking about? I got in trouble with my friend's mother for drawing stick figure at a slumber party. Of course, it shouldn't be the child's fault if they've had exposure to anything like that, but I took the blame instead of my parents. I always knew something was wrong, but because my regular life, my parents were upstanding citizens, my father was a divorce attorney, my mother was on the PTA, I thought I was the problem. I had some memories I retained, but because of the nature of the substance I was on, it made that reality so different than my regular life. I thought these were nightmares, that I was sick, and I didn't tell anybody.
Why do you think your family got involved in these things?
It goes back for generations. I remember my father confessing that my oldest brother is 8 years younger than him. Is cyclical. With men, especially, when they stifle it, they repeat the patterns, which I don't see as an excuse because I'm not but of course this happens with men. And power and pressure to conform is excellent as a tool for silencing people. They told me that we belonged to the cult of Baal, B-A'-A-L. They told me this with consistency while I was being abused. Now, what you can look up about the cult of Baal, information that is publicly available, is that it is thousands of years old. It is a Phoenician satanic fertility cult. And publicly, it's supposed to have been eradicated. But to my knowledge and my experience, it is not. This is what people perceive the Illuminati to be. It is a group of elites that practices forced and uses these crimes to control people. They happen to have a huge reach over politics and entertainment. My great-grandfather, according to my father, was Walt Disney. Before he moved to the United States, his name was Artur Bick, A-R-T-U-R-B-I-C-K-E. And his twin sister, who he had children with, who I am descended from, was named Minnie. That's where we get Mickey and Minnie Mouse. It's very cute, right? Except for when you consider the abuse that I suspect is still happening to children who go into the entertainment industry, children who are born into it. My father was abused by his parents, and I was raised going to these giant where I would meet other children who were put on television. I was raised getting taken to Bohemian Grove, where I was after the ceremonial corpse burning Alex Jones has talked about. And my memories of these circumstances are still somewhat fragmented. These assaults happened a couple times a month, and I'm blessed not to remember every detail. But my father was consistent in what he told me. It's hard for me to talk about. I want to just answer your questions honestly, as my answers line with what I was told and what I had experienced. Now, this is alleged. When birth certificates have been forged, it's not something I can immediately research myself. All I have to go on is what lies in my memory of who I have met and what I was told. But to answer your basic question, why my family does this, because it was done to them, because having one man bear as many children in a generation as possible and forcing them through these traumatic events, they believe it creates a stronger bond, that creates more loyalty, that it keeps people from talking. And for the most part, they're right, because I'm the only one of my siblings who has directly spoken out about this. There are people who have hinted at it in their music. Of course, Justin Bieber has talked about being assaulted by Usher and Justin Timberlake at P. Diddy's parties, but I don't think it's a coincidence they've only gone after Sean Combs and not his other alleged perpetrators who were born into the bloodline. There seems to be a level of protection for people who are simply born into that world, contrasted with people like Sean Combs or R. Kelly who joined as adults. But I was not in the boardrooms. I was a child on drugs. So I can't tell you exactly who organizes this, exactly how it happens. It's just speculation and memory.
I took on the Azar 7-day challenge to connect with people from all around the world to see if I can learn something new from each of them.
And you're a very powerful speaker, and you're very well researched. And we've had a lot of survivors come on, and we salute you, for the level of detail and knowledge that you have. I think it was David Icke who woke me up to the ancient cults and the bloodlines that continue to these generations. And I think you're the first survivor, perhaps, who's actually detailed how that has continued over the ages. So if you could maybe expand on that a little bit, I think the viewers would find this fascinating.
What specifically would you like expanded on?
So what was the cult that you mentioned earlier, the ancient one?
The cult of Baal, B-A-L.
Yes.
B-A-L.
Yep.
I know very little about it. My family masqueraded themselves as Jewish publicly. But behind closed doors, at Passover dinners, when I was drugged, would admit, we are Satanists. Now, but I can understand, the public has caught on to this, but they call them the Illuminati. And I find that interesting because Illuminati means illuminated. I perceive the Illuminati, in fact, to be individuals like yourself, other conspiracists like Alex Jones, even people like Kanye West who have been trying to illuminate people to this. I do not believe it is a unified organization, but a loose collection of individuals who are illuminated to the cult of Baal, who has successfully mythologized themselves as the Illuminati and convinced people that they are shape-shifting reptilians, myths that can be perpetuated by the psychedelic nature of the tool that they use to abuse victims, which is used to delegitimize people who catch on to what they have been doing. And to be truthful, it was a reason I was anxious to come on here. When people talk about seeing men turn into lizards, it makes everything seem a little bit more delegitimate. Now, when someone has been given a powerful drug, their minds can experience something like that. They can witness something like that. And it's something that kept me very confused as a child. I'm in the material world, in this plane. I'm being assaulted by my father, my uncles, my cousins. But my mind is somewhere else. My mind is going on this fantasy ride. And when I awake, I'm very confused. I also believe there are people who have talked about these outlandish, metaphysical, impossible experiences intentionally to derail conversations about the cults and their power in media and politics.
How prevalent are these Satanists in high society, and are they disguised?
Yes. They control so much more than I think even I can understand. I told you my father boasted that his grandfather was Walt Disney. Now, I remember when Viacom bought Fox, but Fox held a hard line on not selling the news station. Steve raged and cried for a month because that would have been a full monopoly on the American news market. I remember meeting all sorts of politicians, American and foreign, and entertainers. And as far as that goes, I'm happy to answer honestly if you want to ask me about specific people, but I am very scared to name individuals if I am unprompted.
Yeah, if you say you met somebody, there's no legal consequences of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you want to tell us who you've met, and the viewers can just imagine, what was happening. So with NordVPN, you can watch my Sons of Ecstasy documentary if you're in the UK, even though it's only available in America, using the Quick Connect. See, I've got it on my phone right here. Plus, as you know, I've been hacked. I've lost my YouTube channel multiple times. NordVPN protects you from multiple types of assault. You can become safer online with a single click. Stay safe from scams, phishing, and malware with Threat Protection Pro. Never stop with the fastest VPN on the market. Threat Protection Pro has protected hundreds of millions of people from attacks. Someone sent me an email pretending to be a sponsored ad, and I clicked on it, and it was a phishing attack, and that's how I lost my channel. I wish I had Threat Protection Pro at that point. If the hackers have got your info on the dark web, Nord will monitor it for you and alert you. So you can get 4 months extra on a 2-year plan at nordvpn.com/Attwood, ATT-Wood. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/Attwood. Link is in the description box if you're watching this on YouTube. Thank you for supporting our sponsor. Back to the podcast.
For your viewers across the pond, I do have fragments of memory of only once meeting the royals on the one trip I took with my family over to the UK, and it must have been 2005 or 2006. I can't remember if it was the summer I went into the 8th grade or into the 9th grade. I have met everyone who has been an American president in my lifetime, including Donald Trump, who I have to say looked like he was at a funeral when he was at the inauguration the second time around. I don't think he wanted any part of it. I have met the Kardashians, which is why I believe Kanye West has appeared to have gone off his rocker. I met Harvey Weinstein. The same night, I met Jeffrey and Ghislaine, and he wouldn't make eye contact with me. He did not want to participate in the abuse of the small children. I believe that's a man who is behaving as most Hollywood producers do, which doesn't make what he did with those actresses okay. But it looks to me like this is a man who was an easy scapegoat, who wanted to expose what takes place with children in the industry and with our family. There are a lot of people like that who have been vilified as, and while they are not innocent, It's like choose your evil. Jeffrey was not a hardcore. He was guilty for what he did to those teenagers. But my family ritualizes the 3-year-olds, which Jeffrey was not privy to. My twin brother was raised on the Disney Channel. That was painful for me. We were separated when we were 4, and I didn't see him until he was on TV. With a pilot episode in which he pimps out his sister for a trading card. There's a sequence of shots where the words Royal Tycoon flash on screen, followed by a clip of the gross nerdy boy he tricks into going on a date with, plunging himself into a baby's crib. And he's been in the media for making trouble on sets and abusing his partners, and not saying his behavior is justified, but when you consider what someone like that goes through as a child and the separation issues that are put on them, it makes sense why abusive behavior is repeated. And I pray for him regularly. I am anxious to talk about my siblings because they are victims. I want them to feel that it is safe for them to speak up, but I don't want to feel like I am betraying them by naming them directly either. And I've already talked about on my TikTok channel. I've talked a little bit about the last time I saw my mother. I was getting by Larry. It sounds like a comedy line almost, and I've used it as a comedy line. I enjoy my stand-up; it's healing for me. But I decided before coming on here, I wasn't going to, with few exceptions. I didn't want to name anyone unless you asked me about them. I think there are a lot of people the public speculate on. If you bring them up, I'm happy to talk about them. But
yeah, so I think the viewers would be very curious then about Jeffrey. And what's your view on his role in the apparatus?
My understanding is that I met him in Aspen in 2007, and that was a reintroduction. My father said, "Hey, remember your uncle Jeffrey?" And Jeffrey said, "Hey, Anya, it's great to see you again." Jelaine was there. What they told me was that Jeffrey worked for Stephen. And as I said, he's guilty for what he did to those teenage girls here in New York City and down in Florida, and on St. Andrews. But I do not believe he was in charge of orchestrating what has been going on in our family for generations. With my experiences, I believe he wanted to talk more about the other parties involved. And I know he didn't kill himself. I'm not sure whether they let him go and get plastic surgery and flee the country, or if they did, kill him. But I do believe he was a pawn, and that his story blew up in the media to keep people from looking beyond him. If Jeffrey was the one villain in charge of it, then, he's dead, it's all over, everything's good now. And that leaves my father free to continue 3-year-olds and running Viacom from behind a veil while his paralegal runs his divorce practice, as he bragged about to me growing up.
So you're saying that Jeffrey wasn't involved in the full-on occult practices, he was just part of a machine, and then they just used him to make an example out of?
He was involved in the full-on occult practices, but not necessarily of his own volition. I have memories of men being forced to assault me when they didn't want to. I remember one met this brilliant comedic actor. Actually, it's better dramatic work. My father's screaming at him, telling him to penetrate me, and he makes one thrust and backs away, and my father gets outraged and says, "You're going to come. You're going to come." This poor man is crying throughout it, and I'm barely conscious. Jeffrey may have been involved in the full-on occult practices, but he's not one of the hardcore of the sickness where they are actually attracted to small children.
Yeah, Lady C mentioned that as well about a hebephile or something versus. So, in terms of Maxwell, then, who do you think? What do you think her role was?
I think she enjoyed it, much like my stepmother did. I think she is as guilty of as Jeffrey was. But I didn't know her very well. I don't even remember a conversation with her.
Shop everything under the sun at wayfair.co.uk.